This video is being provided by the American Student Achievement Institute for schools participating in ASA's Redesigning School Counseling initiative. The purpose of this video is to discuss school counseling data collection and specifically counselor time use data. So we'll begin with just a little bit of review. The RSC terminology that we discussed at our first steering team meeting is going to be very important as we start to collect the counselor time use data. So I'd like to just review that a little bit. So as a reminder, in RSC, we talk about 4 different types of school counseling activities and then also non-program activities. So guidance activities are the activities that teach all students the knowledge and skills that they need to make sound decisions in areas that impact their academic, career, and social and emotional development. Guidance activities, because we're in teaching mode, can be provided by a lot of different types of knowledgeable people. School counselors, community members, teacher advisors, classroom teachers, parents. Knowledgeable people can teach. So guidance activities are for all students, and they can be provided by many different types of folks. Counseling activities are activities that provide counseling for targeted students who have a social and emotional concern that is interfering with their learning. Counseling activities, because we're in counseling mode, should be provided by licensed professionals, including licensed school counselors, licensed school social workers, or licensed school psychologists. Advocacy activities are the activities that counselors do to create an environment that supports rigorous learning for all groups of students and individual students. Advocacy activities are provided by school counselors, but they can also be provided by community members, teacher advisors, classroom teachers, parents, all different types of folks. Management activities are the activities that counselors perform behind the scenes in order for the school counseling program to run smoothly and efficiently. And again, those activities can be provided by school counselors, but they can also be provided by community members, teacher advisors, classroom teachers, parents. And then non-program activities are defined as activities that do not help students due to one of 2 things: master the guidance standards or learn the curriculum that school counselors teach, or they don't help students address personal or social issues that are interfering with their learning. So counselors may be doing tasks that are important for the school to function, but if they're not helping students master guidance standards or address a personal social issue that's interfering with learning, then those activities are considered non-program activities. Okay, then very quickly, let's look at the organizational structure. Just as a reminder, RSC is facilitated by a steering team. It's managed by a steering team. And among the steering team members, we have delegated tasks. So one of the steering team members has the task of data collection. They're the ones that will coordinate the collection of student data, counselor data, including this time use data, and school counseling program data. And then the other part of the organizational structure is a school counseling council. The council is a broadly based group of people that bring lots of different perspectives to the table. And again, that council is probably going to be 25 to 30 people to ensure that all the schools and community stakeholder groups are represented. Okay, so now let's look at counselor time use. So first of all, let's consider how this data will be used after it's collected. So in the RSC process this year, you will be collecting data during the months of November, December, and January. And we're starting out collecting the time use data right away. Then later in the year, in March, during a discussion with your council about root causes, we'll bring the data to the table to have your council look through it. And with your council then, we'll be asking these 3 questions. Based on our student needs, how do we want our counselors to spend their time? So we'll look at our desired time use, counselor time use, in order to meet student needs. And then we'll say, how are counselors actually spending their time? And at that point, you'll bring the data to the table that you've been collecting for the past several months. And you'll say, okay, here's our desired time use, here's our actual time use. And you'll see how those line up. And if they don't line up, then you'll start to talk with your council about what adjustments can we make to enable the counselors to spend their time differently to address our student needs. So again, this data that we're collecting, the time use data, it will play a part in the discussion down the road. And then a year after that, as you're collecting follow-up data, we'll look to see, did the counselor time use change based on these adjustments that you made this year. So here is an actual slide that we'll be working with your council. And again, the council during this meeting in March, they will define your desired time use, their desired time use, and then you'll come in and say, okay, now here's the actual. And you'll see if there's a mismatch between how we want counselors to spend their time and how they're actually spending their time. And again, the desired time use will be based on student needs. So this is all tied into what do kids need, how do we need counselors to spend their time in order to deliver those needs, to meet those needs, and then where are we actually and what adjustments do we need to make. Okay, so that said, let's look through the online system to see how we're going to collect the time use data. The process page. Okay, so I'm logged into the RSC online system, and I've clicked over here in the process tab to open up the process page, and you'll notice that I'm here on the foundations tab. So I'm going to scroll down to collect data, and you'll see in this data collection section of the process page, there's 3 different parts. So right now you're watching the counselor time use video right here in this first part. There will be another video that talks about the self-studies and another video that talks about the student survey. Okay, so the first thing we want you to do on counselor time use is to estimate your counselor time use percentages. So I'm going to click on enter, and you'll see here there is the different activities that we just talked about. Here's the definition. Here's some examples of some things that would be that type of activity. And then what we'd like you to do is to just say, you know, right now at this point in time, based on an estimate, here's how we think we're spending our time. You don't have any data yet to back this up, so this is just a guess. It's fine if you guess wrong, but just give it your best guess. And we'll pull that back in later. And once we have time use data, we'll drop in data-based time use percentages rather than just guesses. Make sure if you have after you have those entered, it's saved at the bottom of the page. Okay, I'm going to go back to the process tab. Scroll down to data collection. I'm going to go to the second step. So our second step is to begin the counselor time use log. To do that, we need to click the icon in the enter column. And in this column, we'll be setting up some default time frames to begin with. Your individual counselors will be able to change these defaults, but we'll just put in here something to kind of get them started. So let's say that as a default, you want your counselor log to start at 7. You can change that to wherever you want it to be, and we're going to end it at 4:30, or again, change this to how you would like it to be. It's okay if this ends up outside of contract hours, even if you put this at 8 in the evening. It's just that on most nights, probably people will not be filling in time use in the evenings. But if there's a parent night and people are working in the evening, this allows them to be able to go at that time. Same thing in the morning. If your school day, your contract time doesn't start until 7:30, but a lot of counselors get there early to do work before the day starts, you can start this before your contract time. Then you also, as a default, can set up how many minutes do you want to be in a time block. You can have lots of choices from 5 minutes to 30 minutes. A lot of counselors like to use 5 minutes, or some like to use 5 minutes just because then they can write down every 5 minutes what they're doing. I think most counselors, though, will do a 15-minute. I like to do a 20 for some reason, but 15, I think probably most counselors are doing 15. Don't forget to save. Then, what we need to do next is to send each counselor an individualized website where they will go to enter their time use information. So I've already entered 3 counselors. To add a counselor is really simple. Just put in an ad, put their first name, their last name, and then their email address. As soon as you save that, that counselor will get an email that gives them their individualized link where they go to enter their time use data. If a counselor loses that link, you can resend the link. And if you, for some reason, need to remove a counselor, you can do that as well. Okay, so if I open up the website to show you what the counselors receive, this is what will come into their inbox. So they'll click on this email, and this gives them a little bit of introduction about RSC and the time use study. And then there's a section that has their personal link. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this link so you can see what the counselors will see. And there it is. So the first thing as a counselor I want to do probably is bookmark this so I didn't have to keep going back to the email to open up that link. So they'll bookmark it, and then the very first thing I go to is the counselor information page. After this is complete, this will open up to the weekly log. If I try to open the weekly log right now, it's going to tell me that the counselor information is missing. So I go in here, and as an individual counselor, I want to say how many hours are in my contract to work each week. So I'm going to say 7.5 or 40 or whatever your contract is. If you're a part-time counselor, of course, that's going to be more than 20 if you're half-time. Then we want to know for each individual counselor, what is their FTE or full-time equivalency. If you're full-time, that FTE would be 1. If you're part-time, it might be 0.5. If you're half-time, 0.75. If you're 3/4 time. So it's really important that these are accurate because the computer is going to do a lot of calculations based on these 2 numbers. So when you're teaching your counselors how to do this, make sure that those numbers are accurate. Then we want the counselor to enter some time use goals. So again, at this point, we haven't looked at any student needs. So this is kind of a guess about what do kids need and how should we be spending our time to meet those needs. This will be different for each different student population. It'll be different for different building levels, and it might be different, based on what's going on in society. Society is, there's a lot of talk about all the social emotional needs that kids have in the media. Then it might be, that you're finding yourself wanting to increase the percentage of time that you spend in counseling. So I'm just going to put some numbers in here, and you'll notice that when I do, I'm adding up the total at the bottom. One of the important things is that we don't want that number to go over 100%, because we want to limit our time to contract hours for the most part. Okay, so we'll put in 40 on counseling, 5 on advocacy. Let's put 20. Actually, I would probably spend 20% of management ideally. So increase guidance to 50. That brought me up to 5. I know I want to try to limit my non-program to 5%. So that put me up to 100%. If you go over, it allows you to go over. So if you're a counselor who typically, I'm sorry, we don't want to go over there. So yeah, so make sure that that does not go over 100% on the ideal use of the desired use of your time use. Okay, and then here, the default that was put in earlier on when my counselor time use would start and end will come here. But for me, I know I'm often, maybe every other week I'm getting to school really early, so I want to be able to log my time that's early. And I know that sometimes I stay late into the evening at parent programs or just because there's a lot of it to do. And so I'm going to change, for me personally, my time use log, and I can also change my minutes per block. Okay, so I'm going to save this. And now you can see that automatically takes me over to the weekly log. So in the weekly log, what we want to say is what we did. Maybe this first one, you're doing a financial aid lesson plan. You're writing that at 6 in the morning. And that is a management activity, not face-to-face with kids or parents. You're doing that in order to make your program run. One thing that's kind of interesting is that if I just enter that, I can hover. If I'm thinking I'm going to spend maybe 45 minutes on that, I can hover on that, hit the shift button, oops, hover on that. Make sure I'm doing this right here. Okay, so if you ever get mixed up like I just did about how to copy and make that go down several items, you can go over here to tips. So go to tips, and here it talks about select the appropriate code, hold down the shift key, and then click on the last time block for that activity. So let me go back and instructions. Back to weekly log. So type this in. I'm going to then hover over the block that I want to continue to. Shift key. There we go. So it's shift and then click, and that will copy whatever you wrote in. So yeah, shift click. I was trying to do control click. So shift click. Okay. Also, since we just looked at that tips, there are also some ideas up here, like when should you complete the log. We recommend that you complete it the day before as kind of your agenda for the next day, and then make adjustments as you need to. And then here's some tips on trying to decide which category to use. Sometimes counselors have questions about, is this guidance or is it academic guidance, or I'm sorry, is it guidance or is it counseling, or is it guidance or is it management? So this will give you some tips on that. Okay, going back to the weekly log. So I've got some activities in there that are management. Let's say that the next thing I'm going to do is to write student passes. That is also management. And then let's say school in this building starts at 7:30 and I'm going to see my first student. So here's Jane Doe, and I'm going to see Jane Doe to work on her schedule and advise her on picking electives. So I'm going to put that in for guidance, and I'm planning to work with Jane for half an hour. So I'm going to do shift and then click, and that takes me down to a couple of hours. One thing that might be interesting is that if you're meeting with John Smith's parents, on that one, if you're meeting with somebody to talk to them about how to address the situation with their child or their student. That would be consultation, which is a practice within counseling. So when we're talking to teachers or parents to help them address an issue or understand how to work with a specific student or group of students, that's consultation. So we put that in as counseling. So, so you would just kind of enter that over now and just fill that in. Now, there's a couple other definitions up here I want to talk about. So, paid time off. Let's say that this week you have fall break. So I could put in fall break, enter it in as paid time off, which is P, and then I would copy that down to the day. In there. Okay, so that's paid time off. Free time is time when you're in the building and you're being paid, but you're not expected to be working with students. So maybe you do a lunch break from 11 to maybe have a half an hour of lunch. So we're going to put that in. We're going to say this is free time. Copy that down. Yeah, so we've got that in. And then unknown is that you got to the end of the day and you forgot to log, and you're in the building, you're doing something with kids, but you cannot remember what the heck you did at 9 o'clock that morning. So that you would just put in unknown, and then log that in as unknown. So that, and we really need you to do that because the percentages in your time use won't calculate correctly unless there's a code in every single one of these boxes. So, okay, so you can print your week then. When I was doing this, I always loved to fill out my log with a head, just like a doctor or an attorney would schedule their time ahead of time. I always scheduled my time ahead of time. That allowed me to gain control over my day, and then I would print out the week, and then that would just become my list of all the things I was doing that day. So really helped me gain control over my day. Okay, so as you do that, it automatically saves. You can see up here that it says saved, so it's been saving as I've gone. I can switch weeks. I can go previous week, next week. I can click on the calendar to select a week. When the calendar opens, it'll automatically come up to the current week. Okay, then on summary reports, I'm not going to have a lot of data because I haven't entered a lot of data. But you can see here are the goals that I have, and then here's my my summary for the school year so far. So we can see that my guidance goal is to spend 50% of my time in guidance. Right now, I'm at 22%. This will change from week to week, but as you have more and more weeks in here, you get a more accurate indication of how you spend your time over time. So, and then one other thing I wanted to point out is this number, this adjusted FTE. So that number might be different than your actual FTE. So let's say that what the adjusted FTE is doing is it's calculating the percentage of time that you can actually spend on tasks other than non-program tasks. So let's say that you're a counselor that's being used heavily as an administrative assistant. You have all kinds of non-program tasks that are assigned to you. If you are spending half of your time doing non-program tasks, you're not actually a full-time counselor. You're only a half-time counselor if you spend half of your time doing non-program tasks. So the computer will calculate your adjusted FTE. If you spend half of your time doing non-program tasks, it'll say you don't really have a full-time counselor, even though that's what it says on paper. You really have a half-time counselor because the counselor is spending so much time on the program. And then the other thing is that on your this bottom section, it'll start to show your weekly entry. This I think is kind of interesting for me personally. I noticed that my guidance time was really low in October. So what we started doing is moving a lot of our group counseling and things to October, since we knew that was a time when we weren't spending a lot of work with kids doing guidance activities. So, over time, you'll be able to see how these percentages fluctuate. Okay, so that's that, and and then we talked about the tips page. So that's how to enter the information. So counselor information. This can be changed as you go. Weekly log, summary reports, and any tips. One other thing that's good to know is that the central office staff in your school districts have a central office page that is also that is aggregating the time use for all the counselors in your building. So we can also get a sense of building level counselor time use percentages. So, okay, I'm going to go back to the process page. And look at the next thing in this section about counselor time use. One of the things that we need is for you to let us know that you have permission to share individual counselor time use data or in the district's time, or in your school's time use data with your council and with your steering team. So let's open up that form. So what we need you to do is just to fill out this form. So it's school year, and then the number of counselors in the school during this year, and then I give permission to ASA to publish my time use data on a password-protected online system that supports my school's RSC, redesigned school counseling. So we just want to make sure that that everyone understands that their data will be shared in a password-protected online system that only your RSC steering team has the username and password to. And then I understand that this is what we show, so the name, and we show the percentage of time that they spend in different types of activities. And then we're also making a note for the principal that by signing below that they agree, the principal agrees to use the counselor time use data for the purpose of school counseling program improvement rather than counselor evaluation. So we just want to make sure that when there are changes that need to be made, that this data is going to be used to help design a better program rather than evaluating individual counselor. So, okay, so the counselor signs off, the principal signs off, and then going back to the online system, you're going to enter here. You're just going to tell us that for this current school year that you have this release of flow data when the counselors have signed. You don't have to submit it to us, you're just verifying, confirming to us that you have it. Pick the name of the person that your steering team is confirming this, and then save that. Then, as the last step in this section, you're going to submit to us that you have filled out that confirmation and that you're ready to tell us that you've done it. So you're submitting that to us, and then I review the data, I review the rubric items, I hit submit. And you can see at the top it says it was successfully submitted in the time. Back to the process page. collection is now the status analysis. And then the very last step is just to, we go back. In step 3, we were beginning the counselor time use data. In step 4, we're continuing the counselor time use data. So in November, you'll submit to us that the counselor time use data has been submitted. And you'll notice here in the rubric that we always want you to check the rubric. Each counselor's log completion rate is 100%. Each counselor's proper log completion rate is 95%. In other words, no more than 5% of each counselor's time is noted as unknown or blank. So those are the 2 things we're looking at. So you'll check that off and then submit. Don't do that now. We'll do that November 22nd at the end of the month. And then each month there will be a section where we continue to log and submit that you're logging the counselor time use levels. There's that in January. We're continuing to do this. Okay, so back to the data section. See, we've now worked through all 5 steps of the counselor time use, and that's it. So there will be another video that you'll be able to watch. You'll watch the self-studies video, and so you'll be able to watch that video there, and then the student survey video. So, okay, thanks so much, and as always, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. You're on the steering team homepage. Your support specialist, Tina Weissman's name will be here, and you'll see the activity information about how to get the process page. Okay, that's it. So thanks so much, and if you have questions, please call. Thanks.